Welcome to Spirit Outspoken, the podcast for Christians who are ready to explore the deeper side of faith. We believe God's truth is bigger than what we've been taught, and that real spirituality isn't something to fear, it's something to discover. Each week, we open the space to explore miracles, energy, healing, consciousness, and divine science, all through the lens of a God who loves us and a faith that's still unfolding. Whether you're deconstructing, rebuilding, or just feeling spiritually stuck, this is your place to reconnect with wonder, deepen your walk, and let the Spirit speak.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Spirit Outspoken. Rach and I, you guys, we have been through the gauntlet. We have had so many technical issues. We can't even tell you. I mean, we've lost how many episodes, Rach? 4?
4. Yeah. The hits just keep coming. I'm telling you, we're
I know.
Yeah.
I know. So it's fine. We're flowing, We're probably going to be picking a different platform because we've had too many technical issues. But for now, we're just going to be joining from Zoom because we have lots to say and we will find a way to get it to you guys. Okay.
We're determined.
We're determined. So really this episode, Rach and I just went on this journey that was sort of unexpected. We started with healing ancestral trauma, and a lot of that, led us down this path around healing female voices and what happened throughout generations and centuries. And as we always do on Spirit Outspoken, we tend to look at how Jesus would view some of the topics, or perhaps what his viewpoint would be on some of the topics that we're discussing. And that led us to how Jesus viewed and upheld women in the Bible. And we have, developed this awesome community, whether it's from guests that we've had on the show or people that are following us, and they give us amazing resources and ideas to explore. Yeah. And Chelsea from Mana Temple, we had no idea the rabbit hole we were going to go down. And I don't even think she knew the rabbit hole she was going to send us down, but she recommended a book that was all about uncovering the real Mary Magdalene and the divine feminine voice that got lost throughout Christian history. So if you've been on this journey with us, you know that we went through healing ancestral trauma, to what voices were lost throughout history, to really how did the Bible come to be? If voices were lost, what happened? So all we're really going to be doing in this episode is kind of reflecting on, what does that mean for us now, right? Because you guys, we're on this faith journey that is forever unfolding. There's never a destination, and you're seeing this in real time. So we just kind of wanted to take some time and reflect on what this has meant for us. So maybe, Rach, we could start by just exploring how this influences our upbringing, or the faith or the beliefs that we had through our life thus far.
Yeah. I don't think either one of us realized just how extensive this would get. And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same if they've kept up with the episodes, that, we have this book called the Bible that many of us have based our entire life around, and yet very few of us know really the true history behind it.
Yeah.
So a little bit of background of how I was raised, because I think you and I, Jace, have talked about before, even though we were both Christian, I think that looked very different in the households we were raised in.
Yes.
So I grew up, I was part of the ELCA Lutheran Church, very active in my church community, but very progressive, I would say, overall, in that denomination, gay people are welcomed and can get married and be pastors. But one of the biggest things I think in my spiritual upbringing that sticks with me is, my mom is a teacher. And so one of the things that I just so value and appreciate about how she approached spirituality with me is that she welcomed my questions, and that combination of teaching and learning with spirituality was just instilled in me in such a young age. And anytime I had a question, I was never told, oh, we don't think that, or that's wrong. It was almost like she would welcome my questions with more questions of well, what would that mean? Or have you researched that? Or That's an interesting point. Like maybe we should look at that together. And I really truly believe now that I know through astrology what my purpose is, right? It's to heal and then help others transform and heal and grow. I really believe that my mom was my mom for a reason because she instilled that in me in such an early age of keep looking, keep seeking. Truth is important. We're welcome to explore and unfold and uncover what really is truth and knowledge for us. And I just will forever be grateful of that. I just feel like it was so valuable. So I think for me, this wasn't like earth shattering. You know what I mean? Because I've always been invited and encouraged to question. So I think this was just more of that unfolding in my life. And even though I have learned a ton, I don't feel like it really shook me a whole lot. There's some things, the concept of sin is different, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is sin just a separation from God or is it doing bad things? Like those are things that I'm still kind of noodling over. Was Jesus a blood sacrifice or, a wonderful teacher? Like all these things have me pondering, I guess, and noodling over some of these things, but they haven't really shook me in any major way or made me feel like I'm losing faith in some way. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And for what it's worth, I mean, I love how you're talking about how your mom raised you and how that has created a space for you to always explore. And I have shared, I did not grow up with a faith that was like that. For me, there was sort of one way to believe. And it wasn't that my parents, it was sort of how they were taught to believe, right? So I don't really feel like this
Absolutely.
came from my mom per se, but it was more so like questioning wasn't really welcomed because that really wasn't okay in the church, right? It was very literal. And I, unlike you, was totally shook. Like I feel like for me, this has been really eye-opening, but even more so really validating because I have started in the past 5 years trusting my experience and trusting my intuition when it comes to faith and not necessarily the rules and the regulations that I have been raised to believe was how faith needs to be structured around. So I've been doing that anyway. And I was sort of like, I don't really know what this means because I'm going to be following my heart, but I don't know what this means for when people ask me like, are you Christian? It almost felt inauthentic to be like, yes, because the way that I've been taught to understand what Christian was, I was no longer identifying with. And that was
Mm-hmm.
because of experiences from me, right? The Jesus that I felt in times of need, like getting on my knees and praying over my son's leukemia diagnosis and feeling Jesus's presence and knowing so clearly that it was love, complete unconditional safety. That experience to me was butting heads with, I don't know, I don't think Jesus would be okay with gay people. I don't know, I don't think Jesus would be okay with women speaking in the church, right? Like it was like this version of Christianity that I just was having such a hard time reconciling with. So I was like, well, now what? Right. So
Yeah.
this is why this whole thing, this journey that you and I have been down on over the last like month and a half has been so revolutionary for me because not only is it changing me, but it's helping me really narrow down how I want to raise my kids, right?
Yeah.
Because what you said, you were really blessed to be raised with a teacher to I like encourage you to ask questions and answer your questions by asking more questions. And that is such a powerful way to help guide people. And I see it in you as an adult. Like as your friend, you have always made questions and exploration and alternative opinions and theories safe and welcomed and you never reacted in a strong way and I see myself as a very opinionated person but my perspectives are flexible and like talking about astrology that's all about Gemini like we are changing and thinking and learning and whatever like I'm passionate about my viewpoints but I'm always open about it but it's like almost like my passion can almost lead people to be like oh well she may not feel like this is okay to think otherwise. And that's always like in our friendship, we talk about this like teacher student dynamic of Gemini and Sagittarius. And I see it play out, especially in this now, right? But how it's influenced me in terms of like how now I want to raise my kids. I'll tell you a story. So just like 2 weeks ago, I'm down this like Mary Magdalene path and I'm pissed and mad and like, how unfair, how unjust that this woman that has such a gorgeous, beautiful, revolutionary teacher that really turned out to be a partner with Christ, a leader of the apostles, was slandered and her name dragged through the mud as this like repentant prostitute. It like couldn't have been further from the truth, right? And like I firmly believe that, you know, maybe it was an accident that they said that, but I don't believe that. I believe that they were like, oh no, as soon as people understand the truth about Mary Magdalene, this will change everything. And it has. It's changed everything for me. So I wanted to share this with my oldest son. And he's been very into like ancient aliens and watching all these documentaries of me. He's very open-minded. And like you were talking with him at the pool yesterday. He's an interesting kid to talk to.
He's like an old sweet soul. Yes. He really is. Yeah.
He is. And like he's fun to talk to and he asks great questions. So anyhow, so we were watching all these documentaries and I was like, do you want to watch a documentary about Mary Magdalene? And he said, sure. I said, what do you know about Mary Magdalene? He was like, I don't know about her, but I don't really know who she is at all. So we watched this documentary and I searched for kids because, you know, the Bible can be like a horror movie, you know, like Dungeons and Dragons and like death, right? Yeah. So I searched it and what was this documentary? It outlined Mary Magdalene as a prostitute. And it was recently made, despite the fact that the church, I was like either in 1960s or 70s, like made an announcement that she was indeed never a prostitute, not a prostitute, yet a very prominent figure, right? But here we are, still perpetuating this lie. So I put on the documentary and we go through this and I got really, really upset. So I like threw the remote on the couch and I was like, this is not true. So then I found like an actual documentary, an adult documentary that went through it and we watched it together. And at the end, I see him just sort of like thinking and really in his head. And I said, okay, what are you thinking about? And he said, well, how do we know any of it's true? And I said, well, like, what do you mean? He goes, well, what if Jesus didn't rise after death? What if, you know, Mary wasn't a virgin, right? Like he's kind of like going through all of these different like weights, these
really big, deep questions,
and these really big, immaculate things and these miraculous things surrounding Christ. Like, what if those aren't true? And I was tempted to give him my perspective on like, well, I believe that Jesus rose from the dead, right? Like I believe that. But I stopped and I waited a second and I said, instead, and this is like learning me as a parent, I said, how would your opinion or your relationship with Jesus change if those things weren't true? And he stopped and he said, it wouldn't. It wouldn't change. And I got really excited in that moment because I realized that my goal as a parent now is to definitely teach my children about faith and teach my kids about the empowering word of God, for sure. Yeah. But it's more important for me now to help raise critical thinkers because I believe if they find a faith that they personally really identify with, that will be something that they can build off of, they can trust, they can go back to and return to and continue to grow. Because listen, faith is personal. You know, it's a personal experience. And the way in which you look at life and the way that your experience have been shaped and the things that you will go through and endure as a human being in this lifetime is going to dictate what your relationship with God and Jesus looks like. And I don't want to influence that in a way that limits their ability to believe.
Yeah, that's so beautiful, Jace. And when you were saying that, I was thinking too, like so often as parents, we feel like it's our job to somehow make them believe or instill this in them. And it's like, why don't we just get out of the way and let Jesus do the work? Because the reality is they're his children. He will communicate to them. I believe God talks to each of us in a way that resonates. Just as I might have different relationships in ways that I communicate with different friends, and it doesn't mean that one is over the other. It's just like I know amongst people I love, like someone might be a really good listener, or someone is, just fun and spirited, and another one is really good when I need like a pep talk, or, like to bring me down to earth. And we relate differently to different people based on who they are as an individual. And I think Jesus and God does the same thing. And so often we step in the middle of that and we meddle with it. Like, allow them to do the work. There is no question too big or bad or wrong. And, I'm like you, I'm learning what's the best way to do this with my kids. And like you've touched on, I'm doing a lot more of asking of questions when they have a question to get them thinking.
Yep.
And honestly, just praying more that Jesus would talk to them in a way that resonates with them and make his presence known.
That's such a good point, Rach, because like I'm just thinking about like my two oldest kids, and they're so different. They're so different, like night and day. My oldest loves tradition, loves reverence, like Catholicism, and like the steps in which he goes through mass, that really connects with him. And he's an old soul and he likes that matter of tradition. Whereas my second oldest is like, dude, I don't know. I mean, like, I laugh at like, I'll talk about angels with my oldest, and he says fantasies, but with like a list. Like, you guys are just talking fantasies, and I'm like, all right, well, that doesn't connect with him, but I have found that he really connects with meditation before bed. He sometimes is open to me praying with him. He, is really fascinated by the stories in the Bible, and he's learning through parable. Yeah, like stories. And that really connects with him. So just being open to exactly what you're saying. Every single person is going to connect with Jesus in their own way. And all we have to do is like help our kids make room in their heart for Jesus to speak with them. And I am convinced wholeheartedly Jesus will find a way to connect. We just have to be able to teach them open-mindedness and trust their instinct and their intuition, because let God do the rest, because who are we to say this is how you need to learn? I mean, I think back to like what we learned too, which was really surprising. In the very, very first early days of Christianity, there was not one school of thought. Think about that. Think about that. Right after Jesus rose and left Earth, dozens, perhaps hundreds of different interpretations of his teachings and different schools of thought. Some were more feminine based, some were more hierarchical, some were more rooted in Jewish tradition and law, right? If Jesus had such a strong, stern opinion of how people should learn and grow and practice their faith, he would have let that be known right away.
That is so true, Jace. Yes.
Like the time, like think about recency bias. Like whatever happens recently is typically what people go off of. And like, that's not what happened. So having this diverse thought, being open to interpretation of how Jesus is really speaking to us as individuals is really cool. I have learned so much more about people just sharing like, hey, I read this scripture and this is how I interpreted it. I'm like, that's super thought-provoking. I may have a different opinion. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter, but it's just thought-provoking and it makes you think, I don't know. I'm just really energized by all of this.
I am too. And I just think it goes back to Jesus meets us where we are. He knows us as individuals. We were created uniquely and divinely for a purpose. And I believe that he will connect with us in a way that feels meaningful and fulfilling.
I do too. I guess like the last thought I had was, I made the point at one point, I don't remember what episode it was recently, but it was around how we were comparing like the Salem witch trials and how a lot of the things that were sort of outlined in those early gospels and Gnostic texts that were intentionally burned, buried, or destroyed by the early church really would lend a more experiential faith or spirituality with Christ. And I've kind of known in my heart of hearts that I, depending on how people may view this, right? They could say the spirit of discernment, or, I have like some type of psychic ability, right? I now feel like through this process, I feel really empowered to be way more open. I know people are going to be like, okay, now you feel empowered. Like I'm talking about this stuff publicly for 7 months, but I guess I've still wrestled with that. It's fear. It's fear, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't want to go to hell. I like don't want to do anything that's like bad. And I was raised to believe that energy work or spirituality that's outside of what the church condones is evil and bad. And I really feel excited because I had stumbled upon early word of Christ through other texts that were hidden from us that made me feel like, oh, okay, like this is sort of what I was missing. The non-judgmental Christ that I felt in my heart that I viewed were blessings and gifts, not, things that should be condemned or viewed as evil, now had teachings that supported that. So I don't know. I felt really happy when we're reviewing that.
I think so too. I think I have always instinctively just connected more. I remember learning for the first time what Christian mysticism was. And I was like, oh, like this is my jam. And from a very early age, kind of backtracking a little bit what we were talking about with God speaking to our children.
Yes.
So I'm going to share a cool story I had as a kid. So I went to Sunday school and they shared the story of Mary being visited by an angel, and it totally freaked me out. I had a huge imagination as a kid. So every night I would go to bed and just be terrified of seeing an angel, because I'm like, what would that be like? I would be so scared if all of a sudden I look in the corner of my room at night and there's this light being, like shining there. So I would pray every night not to have an angel visit me, right? I was absolutely terrified. And then one night, and I have always gotten things, we've talked about this before, through dreams frequently. Yeah. And this is the first time I ever had like a major dream. And in my dream, I had won a contest for a walk with Jesus. And all I remember is I didn't see a face. I knew it was him, but I reached up and grabbed a hand. And he walked and he talked with me about how he would never do anything to frighten me. And I felt like such immense peace. And it was just so loving. And he just walked and talked to me in a way that felt very natural and reassuring that I don't want to scare you. I love you. You're my child. And I woke up and it was like I was fine. But I just think that's both an example of how he will meet us, he will guide our children, but also like it's not always through the church that we receive answers. Like I really believe he wants to connect with us in multiple ways, and we have to be open to that to allow for it to happen. And we sell ourselves short if we're only viewing it in one way.
100%. And listen, like the kingdom of God is within. What does that mean? The kingdom of God is within. And listen, like there is such beautiful community, resources, fellowship, connection in church. Totally, right? Like we're not disputing that whatsoever. But I think that being open and hearing your own intuition, hearing your voice, hearing who Jesus really is through your own self can really be special. I can tell you like very specific times throughout my life where I have called out to Jesus for help and I just so tangibly felt him. Yeah. And I know him in that way and I know his energy, and it's something that's really beautiful, like sharing what you just shared about your dream. It's just total peace. So just making room and being open to how that comes is, I don't know, I think really exciting. And we really want to hear from you guys. I mean, what have your opinions been about some of the episodes that we've covered? I mean, we hit like some really meaty topics. We'd love to hear from you, learn from you. If there's resources that we haven't dived into yet, certainly let us know, because this has been really eye-opening for us and it's been fun to explore.
It sure has. Yeah, I'm excited. So where are we going next?
Okay, I don't know. Like one thing we should mention. So I think, Rach and I are getting so excited about so many cool different topics that I think we're going to steer a little bit away from doing seasons. And then we're just going to cover topics as they come to us, because it's like sometimes we want to bring stuff to you guys, but we're in the middle of a season and, you know, we don't want to be handcuffed. Okay. We are loose and free and want to do whatever the fuck we want. Okay. So here we are. So next week we decided that we want to talk all about angel numbers. And these are things that have always been, I don't know. I always laugh at these like memes and reels and it's like, oh, okay, my life's falling apart, but I saw 1111 on the microwave. So everything's going to be fine. But in all seriousness, I think angel numbers are a really cool way to explore your connectivity to the unseen, whether that's God or your angels or however you view it. We're going to talk through what certain angel numbers mean. And we're going to talk about some very personal experiences for us that have been really eye-opening. So stay tuned, guys. It's going to be a fun episode.
It is. It is. Yeah. I think it's just a good like segue into some of this more mystical stuff that we're talking about. So be sure to tune in next week.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. If you're ready to take your spirituality to the next level, be sure to check out our website, spiritoutspoken.com. There you can download free educational resources, read our latest blog posts, and join the Spirit Outspoken community. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Spirit Outspoken to stay up to date on news, happenings, shenanigans, and all things Spirit Outspoken.